Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel. In this short video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous night of the local time. We have a lot of very interesting updates, and first we're going to start with Kupiansk direction. There are two hot points in this area. The Russians are ready to start offensive operation against the Ukrainian positions in Sinkovka. There were a lot of speculations and updates that the Russians managed to enter the village, that the Russians have some foothold, but yet the Russians haven't entered and haven't captured even a single building in this small village. And now the Russians published the video how they started bombardments of the edge Ukrainian positions inside the village. So as you can see behind this small tree line, we can see the buildings, the first constructions of the village. So we understand that the Russians located right in front of this settlement, and they're about to start the ground operation to clear this territory. So we expect some intensifying of action in the very near future. So the Russians are going to move obviously along the road. First they need to restore control over this territory, and then they will proceed further. More updates are coming from the square between Stepova-Novoselovka, Ivanovka, Yagidne, Orlyanka. The Russians published another video how they managed to discover and destroy another Leopard, Ukrainian Leopard, or another tank on the road between Kupiansk and Orlyanka. So currently this is the most important area where we can find the heaviest clashes on this direction. The Russians tried to penetrate the Ukrainian defense belt and basically to cut this road, to establish control over this road, and after that the Russians will be able to move in many directions. So the quality of video is not very good, but we can see some shadows of tanks, Ukrainian tanks that were moving along the road. There are around 5 or 6 tanks, and at some moment another tank was destroyed and damaged as a result of probably or tank attack, or maybe as a result of counter anti-tank missile. So currently the Russians are trying to move along the tree lines. There are very heavy clashes on this direction, and we expect that within the next few days, so maybe by the end of this week, the Russians will be able to reach the road and basically to cut this area, and then they will be able to move in many directions. And one of the most important direction is to move further to the south in direction of Stepova-Novoselovka, and the second important direction is to start movements along the road in direction of Petropavlovka. So this is a very important area, and the Russians continue clashes. The Ukrainians are trying to slow down the Russians in this area. On this video we can see another abandoned Russian tank. Few tanks were destroyed, few tanks were damaged, and one of them was destroyed completely, another one was just damaged. And the Ukrainians understand that neither the Ukrainians nor the Russians can evacuate this equipment, at least at this moment, so they took a decision to destroy this armored vehicle. Now we are moving further to Avdiivka direction. We have a lot of very interesting details and updates from this territory. The Russian sources and the Western sources published a lot of updates on map. For example, Russian sources are saying that as a result of clashes on the southern part of Avdiivka, the Russians managed to penetrate the Ukrainian defense belt and to establish control over more trenches, tree lines, and fortifications. So according to some Russian sources, without any geolocated video confirmations, managed to establish control over this territory. For now, I'm not planning to change this map because we need at least some, I don't know, more reliable sources probably, and some video geolocations. Furthermore, most of the Western mappers and deep and just a lot of reliable mappers also have updated their maps between Novokalinova and Krasnogorovka. And according to all these updates, we see that as a result of clashes, the Russians managed to bypass the railways and to establish control over this territory. So this is a very important foothold for further pressure, for further offensive operation in direction of villages like Novokalinova and Keramik. But as I understand, for now the Russians are planning just to maintain their flanks and to establish full control over the railways and to force the Ukrainians to step back further in direction of Novokalinov, because if you remember, yesterday we saw the video how the Ukrainians reconnaissance team managed to bypass the area and to establish control or to get entrenched in this forest. After that, the Russians were forced to start bombardment. So currently there are still like a lot of blind spots that Ukrainians can use for some progress and for some attacks behind the Russian main positions. A lot of updates are coming from the fields between Krasnogorovka and Stepova. Today, the Russian sources published the video of demining process. So as you can see, the Russians, and as you can see, also have updated the map, because according to previous versions of this map, at least this territory, this part of tree lines in the fields are shown as the area under Russian control. But as I understand, based on the geolocations we have, the Russians still haven't managed to achieve this line, and mainly because of like minefields. And we remember a lot of videos from this area. Almost every single day, the Ukrainians published another video how the Russians entered the minefields, and they published a significant number of Russian armored vehicles destroyed on those minefields. So the Russians took a decision to change the tactics. As I understand, they forced the Ukrainians to step back. Their artillery force is the most important, and now they try to demine this area and to prepare the safe roads for further offensive operation and further developments of Russian forces. So on this video, we could see how the Russian tanks were moving along this, let's say, line. The tank was moving something like this. The tanks with demining equipment reached this line, then it turned back and returned on the, let's say, on the like safe tree line. So that was like the video that we just saw. The Russians continued demining. So as I understand, maybe also today we're gonna see more updates and clashes for this area, and the Russians will establish 100% control. And then, of course, it will ease the common situation of Russian forces. And of course, from these positions, the Russians will be able to have some control over the northern foothold on the north of Stepova. So we're gonna follow this situation, obviously. Also, interesting updates are coming from Novomikhailivka. Today, the Ukrainian sources published the video how the Russian forces tried to evacuate wounded forces from the field somewhere in the south of Novomikhailivka. There are few geolocations that we can use for geolocation purposes, and as I understand, this event took exactly in front of this Ukrainian fortification, this stronghold. The Russian infantry, probably after successful or maybe unsuccessful offensive operation, were trying to evacuate forces, and the Ukrainians launched FPV drone strikes, and as a result of those strikes, few Russian soldiers were wounded or even killed. So as I understand, there are very high chances, maybe up to 90%, that this stronghold was captured by the Russians these days or maybe this night. And if we continue receiving same updates, we will update this territory and we will color this territory in red color. And now we are moving further to Zaporozhye area. Very heavy clashes continues on the western part of Robotyne. The Russian sources published more videos and more details of destroyed Ukrainian armored vehicles. The Ukrainians try to develop their positions on the west from Robotyne. They're trying to get as close as possible to Kopany. They're trying to establish control over the trenches and fortifications between Kopany and Novoprokopovka. They want to split this territory in two parts, but for now everything is very difficult. For now, the Ukrainians are just losing a lot of armored vehicles and tanks. For example, on this video we can see another destroyed Leopard and at least 3 or 4 personal armor carriers somewhere in this direction. From the other side, we see that the Russians controlled the situation completely, and with using FPV drones, the Russians continue damage and destroy the armored vehicles of Ukrainian forces. So there are no chances for now for the Ukrainians to develop further. And probably the most important updates, or one of the most important updates, are coming from Kherson direction. As you can see, I have updated the map, and currently I'm showing that at least one street of Krynki is under Ukraine control, because we received geolocated confirmation. This video was made by the Russian forces. On this video we can see how the Ukrainian stormtroopers were moving from one building in this area to another. Maybe this is like fresh forces that just arrived on this bank of the river, and maybe these forces arrived to replace or to make rotation with the group that was located in this area before. So this is 100% confirmation of Ukrainian control over at least a part of this small village. And furthermore, the Ukrainians continue bombardments and FPV drone strikes against the Russian forces in Kherson. On this video we can see how the Russian armored vehicle was moving from one position to another, and at some minutes, some second of this video, this armored vehicle was damaged by the Ukraine FPV drone. So I expect that, of course, the Ukrainians will make more attempts to attack the Russian forces, and one of the possible direction is Karsunki is one of the possible directions that the Ukrainians will use for further landing operations. The Russians tried to solve the issue with the Ukrainian foothold on the south of Pridniprovska, and on this video we can see we continue receiving a lot of video updates of bombardments of Ukrainian positions using FPV drones. So basically, as you can see, the Ukrainians at some positions have progressed, like Kherson direction, because the Russians keep their just mobilized forces who is not so experienced like main Russian regular army. The Ukrainians don't have any progress at all at Rabotina area. Mainly the Ukrainians have just losses in this area in armored vehicles and tanks. The Russians continue advancing in the vicinity of Avdiivka from the south, from the north. The Russians continue storming Operation Novomikhailivka. Today we got more geolocations, and the Russians continue attacking and attempts to encircle and create at least a few cauldrons on Kupiansk direction. We're talking about Kislovka, Kotlarovka and Sinkovka area. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds you to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.